Shri Govinda Gopinath Madan Mohan Ju ki jai. Nitya Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shmarchala Bhakti Viranta Narayan Gosai Maharaj Shri Gurudev ki jai. Nitya Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shmarchala Bhakti Viranta Vaman Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitya Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shmarchala Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Nitya Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shmarchala Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Gosai Maharaj ki jai. Nitya Pravishtam Vishnupad Ashtatarashata Shmarchala Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosai Prabhupada ki jai. Nitya Pravishta Mahabhagavat Shila Goksharas Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitya Pravishta Shila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki jai. Nitya Pravishta Vaiṣṇava Sarvabhauma Shila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Dashagunath Shar Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. नाम अक्षय श्रीहरिदास ठाकुर की जाए. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जाए. श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जाए. सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जाए. श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जाए. श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जाए. श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जाए. श्री भक्ति देवी की जाए. श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जाए. श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जाए. श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जाए. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जाए. नित्य विष्णु विष्णुपाद अष्टतर शतश्मार्चल भक्ति प्रमोद पुरी गोसाई महाराज की जाए. श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. Dandavat pranams Rup Manjari Devi and Rohini Dulal Prabhu. Dandavat pranams. Let me share my screen. Let's change the background color. I like to do that every now and then. Which one should it be? Okay, that will be the background for now. Okay. So today we're singing Kabe Shri Chaitanya More Kori Bena Doya. When will Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur? When will Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestow his mercy upon me? When will I attain the shade of the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas? When will I renounce my identity as the enjoyer? When will I honor the Vaishnavas? With a cloth around my neck, my hands folded, and straw between my teeth, I shall stand before the Vaishnavas free of duplicity. Bitterly weeping, I shall relay all my miseries and beg for a relief from the blazing fire of material existence. When the venerable Vaishnavas hear of my sufferings, they will appear to Sri Krishna profusely on my behalf. In response to the Vaishnavas' prayers, the all-merciful Sri Krishna will become compassionate upon this wicked person. Bhakti Vinod prays to the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas. Please be merciful and take this destitute person into your association. Right. Just checking. Akave Shri Chaitanya More Kori Bena Doya. Kave Shri Chaitanya More Kori Bena Doya. Pai Vaiṣṇava Pada Chaya. Kabe ami Pai Vaiṣṇava Pada ছায়া কবে আমি ছাড়িব বিষয়াভিমান কবে আমি ছাড়িব বিষয়াভিমান কবে কৃষ্ণ জানে আমি করিব সমান কবে বিষ্ণু জানে আমি করিব সমান গলা বস্ত্র কৃতাঞ্জলি বৈষ্ণবনী কাতে গলা বস্ত্র কৃতাঞ্জলি বৈষ্ণব নিকটে দন্তে তৃণা করি দাঁড়াইব নিষ্কপটে দন্তে তৃণা করি দাঁড়াইব নিষ্কপটে কান্দিয়া কান্দিয়া জনা ইব দুঃখ গ্রামা কান্দিয়া কান্দিয়া জনা ইব দুঃখ গ্রাম সংসারয়া নল হইতে মাগিব সংসারয়া নল হইতে মাগিব শুনিয়া আমার দুঃখ বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর শুনিয়া আমার দুঃখ বৈষ্ণব ঠাকুর আমলাগে কৃষ্ণে আবে দিবে না প্রচুর আমলাগে কৃষ্ণে আবে দিবে না প্রচুর বৈষ্ণবের আবেদনে কৃষ্ণ দয়াময় বৈষ্ণবের আবেদনে কৃষ্ণ দয়াময় এহেন পামর প্রতি হবে না সদয় এহেন পামর প্রতি হবে না সদয় বিনোদের নিবেদন বৈষ্ণব চরণে বিনোদের নিবেদন বৈষ্ণব চরণে কৃপা করে সঙ্গে দহ কৃপা করে সঙ্গে লহ জানে বিনোদের নিবেদন বৈষ্ণব চরণে বিনোদের নিবেদন বৈষ্ণব চরণে কৃপা করে সঙ্গে লহ Vaishnava Thakur, Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Vaishnava Thakur, Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Vaishnava Thakur, Jaya Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Sachinandan, Jaya Gaura Hari, Jaya Sachinandan, Gaura Hari, Sachinandan, Jaya Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. See if the internet's still working. Yes. Dandavat pranams, Ganga Didi. Yes, it was kind of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to write this in the future tense. So many kirtans, oh my God, so many of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's kirtans are like this. In the, all right, so this article is a bit, or whatever chapter, is a bit longer than the other chapters in the book. So I might just end with a quick Mahamantra at the end. This is The Heart of Krishna by Srila Bhakti Pramoda Purī Gosvāmī Mahārāja, Vaiṣṇava Aparādha. Don't really know about this subtitle though. The Path of Spiritual Caution. It makes it sound like Vaiṣṇava Aparādha is the path of spiritual caution. Anyhow, yeah. Actually, in the Bengali book, this Vaiṣṇava Aparādha, the original book that this is translated from, there's no chapters. It's all just like one full long thing. There's no divisions anywhere. It's just like one full long article. Once, a Brahmin poet wrote a play about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He went to the holy city of Jagannath Puri to see an old friend and associate of Mahaprabhu, Sri Bhagavan Acharya. The poet wanted him to hear the play, and so he read it aloud to the Acharya and a gathering of Vaishnavas. They praised the composition and thought it would be nice for Mahaprabhu to hear it. But before anything was read to Mahaprabhu, it was first presented to his secretary and confidant, Śrīla Damodar. This was to ensure that the spiritual exchanges of ras, there should not be a long A there. Anyways, this is to ensure the spiritual exchanges of ras presented in the composition were not distasteful, or that the esoteric principles of devotion were not misinterpreted. If such faulty writing was presented to the Lord, he would become deeply disturbed. Bhagavan Acharya approached Śrīla Damodar and requested that he read the composition first and then present it to Mahaprabhu. In Krishna Lila, Śrīla Damodar is Lalitaki, the principal confidant of Srimati Radharani, and therefore most expert in the science of ras. Knowing that the poet was a pure and simple Vaishnava, Śrīla Damodar gently chastised. My dear Bhagavan Acharya, you are a very liberal Vrindavan cowherd boy, and the desire to read any literature presented as scripture sometimes overpowers you. When unqualified poets write about ras, their poetry does not arouse the desired emotion when it is heard. It is ras abhas. Ras abhas is, it's like the incompatible mixing of two rasas, like two rasas that don't go together. I wouldn't translate it as a mere semblance of ras. Even though abhas does mean the semblance, but in this case, ras abhas means when you're mixing two incompatible rasas. It doesn't, yeah. Like I don't know, let me think of a rasabhas. Mustard with whipped cream is a rasabhas. It doesn't go together. Such writing is contrary to spiritual reality. Anyone who cannot properly identify and mix rasic mellows will forever be on the shore of the Bhakti Siddhanta Sindhu. He is fooling himself and others, and Mahaprabhu's pastimes are particularly difficult to grasp. So only persons who have enshrined Mahaprabhu's lotus feet within their hearts as their life and soul are qualified to narrate Krishna Lila and Gaura Lila. Mundane love stories sadden me, but the writings of an expert devotee steeped in ecstatic love brings great joy. Śrīla Rupa Gosvāmī has set the standard for writing drama. Simply hearing the introductory passages to his works gives one great spiritual pleasure. Despite Swarup Damodar's caution, Bhagavanacharya repeatedly requested that he read the poem at least once before making a judgment. After repeated entreaties, Swarup Damodar reluctantly agreed. He assembled all the Vaishnavas and sat down to listen to the drama about Mahaprabhu. The poet read the prologue. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who radiates a golden complexion, has become the soul of the body named Jagannath. His lotus eyes are in full bloom. He has appeared in Jagannath Purī and brought dull matter to life. May that Lord, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Dev, bestow all good fortune upon you. After the Nandi Shloka, the benedictory prologue, was recited, everyone praised the composition. Swarup Damodar asked the poet the meaning of Nandi Shloka. The Brahmin explains, Lord Jagannath's body is exquisite and beautiful, and Mahaprabhu is the soul of that body. Mahaprabhu has appeared in Nilachal, Jagannath Puri, to awaken the spiritual consciousness of the soulless material world. In spite of the approval of the group, Swarup Damodar was outraged and said, "You fool! Are you trying to destroy yourself? Don't you understand that both of them are divine? Jagannath is the embodiment of transcendence and absolute spiritual bliss. Yet you described his body as material, dull, and inert. And Mahaprabhu, the supreme reality, you describe as an ordinary mortal. He is the supreme fire from whom everything emanates. Yet you have portrayed him as a mere spark. So you've offended Jagannath and Mahaprabhu and are doomed. Hell isn't even good enough for you. Those who are ignorant of the principles of divine love, yet dare to comment on them, are fools. You are in total illusion. You have discriminated between the body and soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is a great offense, and there is absolutely no distinction. There is absolutely no distinction between the body and soul of the Supreme Lord. The Lord's personal identity and his body are one and the same. There is never any difference between the body and soul of the Supreme Godhead." This shloka is from the Kurma Puran quoted in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita of Sanatana Goswami. I do not see any form the following verse. I do not see any form superior to a transcendental body full of ecstasy. I surrender unto you because you are the original cause of the cosmic manifestation. And although you have created everything, you are untouched by it. There are those who are fascinated by the radiance emanating from your beautiful jewel-like body. But your devotees penetrate beyond that to approach your beautiful form. Those who neglect your personal form due to mundane perception will live in the misery of separation from you eternally. Krishna is the Lord of the deluding energy, Maya. He is the absolute embodiment of spiritual opulence and infinite bliss, whereas the living entity is an infinitesimal, whereas the living entity is infinitesimal and always suffering as a slave of Maya. When the Vaishnavas heard this admonishment from Swarup Damodar, the master of subtle philosophical analysis, they were stunned. The poetry was extremely... I'm having a hard time reading right now. The poet was extremely ashamed and apprehensive. Like a buzzard among swans, he hung his head. But Swarup Damodar was moved by the poet's dejection and said sweetly, "Go and study Srimad Bhagavatam from a Vaishnava, and take complete shelter of Mahaprabhu's lotus feet. Always seek the association of Mahaprabhu's devotees. Only then will you be able to navigate the waves of the ocean of devotion. Everything will be revealed to you. Then you can be a real pundit and describe Krishna Lila without fault." We should note, we should note that Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, transforms the deluding ravings of those who are devoid of proper spiritual understanding into eulogies of her Lord Krishna, of her Lord Shri Krishna. We find in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is no difference between Jagannath and Krishna, but in Purī, Jagannath is fixed in one place as the infinite appearing as wood, unmoving, Achal Jagannath. Jagannath and Mahaprabhu, although appearing separately, are one, because they are the same one Krishna in two forms. One's Achal Jagannath and the other is Sachal Jagannath. The desire to deliver the world burns inside their hearts. To save everyone, Krishna descended as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By seeing Jagannath, one is freed from material existence. But not everyone can be admitted into his temple in Jagannath Puri to see him. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, however, moves from one country to another, personally or through his representatives. In this way, he delivers all the people of the world. The Brahmin understood his mistakes and with great humility begged for shelter at the feet of all the Vaishnavas. The Vaishnavas were moved and arranged for him to meet Mahaprabhu personally. The poet later took sannyas and continued to live in Puri. So we see that in order to receive the Lord's mercy, we must first obtain the mercy of his devotees. Vishnu and Vaishnavas, our Krishna and Karsneya, are beyond mundane scrutiny. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "Avajananti mamuda manushim tanumashritam parang bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram." Bhagavad Gita 9:11. Fools think that I am an ordinary human being, or at most that God may have descended in a bag of flesh. But I am transcendental, body and soul, the supreme controller of everything. It is stated in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, although God has innumerable forms and pastimes, his highest pastimes are performed as Krishna, appearing in human form, dressed as an ever-youthful cowherd boy, dancing brilliantly and playing on his flute. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 21:101. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the fully independent Lord and the master of unlimited potencies. As the controller of Maya, he uses his spiritual illusion, his Yoga Maya Shakti, to assist him in manifesting his pastimes in the world. Although these pastimes appear to be mundane, they are supermundane. The transcendental form of Krishna, as revealed by Krishna's internal spiritual energy, is the secret treasure of the devotees. This form is manifest from Krishna's eternal pastimes in the spiritual domain. To consider the infinite... Wait, let me just check that... Okay, internet's still going. To consider the infinite Supreme Lord on the same level with the finite Jiva soul, or to distinguish between the Supreme Lord's body and soul as if he were an ordinary person, is to come under the influence of the warped philosophy Mayavad. Krishna condemns the Mayavadi's failure to accept his eternal, infinite blissful body. Śrīla Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, "What becomes of those who think that the Lord's body is matter? Moghasha mogakarmano mogagyana vichetasa rakshasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shrita." Bhagavad Gita 9:12. Those who deny the existence of God seek shelter in the world, but ultimately their hopes and aspirations, their advancement of science and technology, leaves them empty, confused, and lost. If these offenders are devotees, there is a different meaning. That their hopes and aspirations are crushed means their thirst for liberation, salokya, is unattainable. If they are karmis, fruit of workers, they are deprived of being elevated to the heavenly planets, svargaloka. As for jnanis, philosophers, they cannot obtain moksha or sayuja, liberation of merging with Brahman. Then what do they actually gain? They acquire a demoniac mentality in nature and end up hating the Lord and his devotees. The Bhagavad Gita states, Mahatmanastumam partha daivam prakritimashita bhajantyananyamanaso gyatva bhutadimavyayam. Bhagavad Gita 9:13. On the other hand, the really great souls of this world are those who have completely taken shelter in me. Under the direction of my superior energy, they are constantly absorbed in loving me, knowing that I am the inexhaustible source of everything. These great souls realize that although the Supreme Lord appears in human-like form, he is the embodiment of Sat, Chit, and Ananda, and is indestructible and infinite. This Ananya Manas, our constant absorption in bhajan, is the Raja Guyam, the king of all secrets. The following shloka from the Gita elaborates on the nature of bhajan. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha drida vrata namasyantascha mam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. Bhagavad Gita 9:14. Always absorbed in kirtan, with the greatest sense of purpose, my devotees are bowed before me, perpetually worshipping me. They are bowed before me, perpetually worshipping me. Always absorbed in kirtan. Generally speaking, the devotees must observe the rules and regulations of devotion. However, the Vishnu Dharma states that in chanting the Lord's name, there is no consideration of time and place. In the aforementioned Bhagavad Gita shloka, the Lord deliberately hints at Raganuga Bhakti. The behavior of a Rag Bhakta may bewilder those in the lower stages of devotion. The scriptures warn that such Mahatmas, or great souls, must never be judged according to mundane considerations. A person who considers the deity to be a statue, or the Guru and Vaishnavas as ordinary people, belong to a particular Guru and Vaishnavas as ordinary people belonging to a particular social. They belong to a particular social class or caste. They consider the foot bath water of Vishnu and the Vaishnavas as dirty water, or the all-purifying holy name of Vishnu or Krishna as mundane sound, or the Supreme Lord of Lords, Hari, as being on the same level as the gods, is a resident of hell. How does that verse start? Vaiṣṇava jati buddhir gurushu naramatir Vishnur Vaishnava. I forgot. Anyways, but that was a shloka we learned in Gurukul. Mahaprabhu has confirmed that the eternal service to Krishna is our real occupation. Jivera Sarupa Hoy Krishnera Nityadas. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 20:108. The jiva's inherent identity is that he is the eternal servant of Krishna. The deluded jiva is in forgetfulness of his real identity. Thus he becomes completely absorbed in family, making money, pursuing mundane education, and physical beauty. Janma Ashvaya Shruta Shri. These four feed his pride and often precede offensive actions against Vishnu and the Vaishnavas. Sri Parankusha Muni says that negligence in cultivating the following four qualities, in particular, propels the jiva towards committing the aparādha of Arche Vishnu Shiladir. Oh, it starts, Arche Vishnu Shiladir Gurushu Naramatir. Vaiṣṇava Jati Budir. That's what it is. Okay. So it propels the jivas towards committing those aparādhas. Seeing the deity of the Lord as an ordinary sculpture. Not just that. I think probably in the original Bengali it was referring to the full verse, not just that one part of the verse. The jiva must cultivate a positive outlook and give up bad association while seeking the company of pure devotees. Desire leads to bad association, which influences the jiva to develop an atheistic mentality. The scriptures implore us to keep good association. Deceiving oneself and others is called kaitapa. Associating with people who are lying to themselves is called dusanga, bad association. Those who think that things other than the service to Krishna will satisfy them are also called a dusanga. A person must reject bad association and keep the company of genuine devotees. They tell us how to cut the knots of attachment to things bad for devotion. Even if one's guru is inimical towards Vaishnavas, he must be given up. The scriptures instruct that such mundane gurus must be abandoned in favor of a bona fide guru. Bad association of any kind must be avoided like disease. Generally speaking, there are two types of dusanga or asatsanga. The proper conduct for a Vaishnava is to avoid materialistic company. Oh, this is an important verse. It's annoying why they don't put the Bengali verses here. They just put the translation. How does it go? God, I forgot how it goes. The proper conduct... Asat Sanga Tyag e Vaiṣṇava Achar, I think, or something like that. Anyways. The proper conduct for a Vaishnava is to avoid materialistic company. Persons who are slaves to their senses, who are not devotees, or who do not accept Krishna, are bad association. According to this statement, a sincere soul must avoid asat sanga and always seek the association of pure devotees. Otherwise, devotional endeavors bear no fruit. Bad association results in aparādha. Vaiṣṇava aparādha and guru avagya, disobeying the guru, are two most serious offenses. The devotee must strive to remain within the protection of sadhu sangha, or saintly association. A sincere devotee will carefully abstain from indulging in any disparaging thoughts about a Vaishnava's external qualifications. This is particularly important regarding exalted persons who are the real saviors of mankind. Even a neophyte who has recently taken shelter of a Vaishnava guru should be respected and must not be judged by mundane standards. Vrindavan Das Thakur writes that even a veteran Vaishnava has to suffer the consequences for disrespecting another Vaishnava. Didn't we read in a previous chapter that even Shiva can become destroyed by making Vaiṣṇava aparādha? The best Vaishnava Yatha Shambhu. Even Sachimata, Mahaprabhu's own mother. So yeah. Even a person born a Brahman due to previous pious deeds does not have a right to act or speak arrogantly or to harbor disparaging thoughts about a Vaishnava. Such thoughts will cause chaos in his life. He becomes controlled by lust, greed, and anger, and madly chases after women, fame, and fortune. He becomes totally absorbed in material life, and his attachments so thickly cover his vision that even death cannot open his eyes to the truth of hell that awaits him. Jeez. For example, a powerful yogi like Sobari Rishi, due to his aparādha against Garuda, had to succumb to material allurements, and Prajapati Daksha had to suffer untold misery because of his offenses to Shiva. And when Devananda Pandit and Gopal Chapal offended the purest of devotees, Srivas Thakur, and when Ramachandra Khan and the Brahman Gopal Chakravarti offended the most exalted Vaishnav Haridas Thakur, all these offenders experienced horrendous miseries. In Mahaprabhu's pastimes, there are many incidents of such offenses and their dramatic consequences. Vaishnav Aparādha can be absolved only when the offended Vaishnav chooses to forgive the offender. Serving a different Vaishnav or begging the Supreme Lord for forgiveness will not excuse the offender. For example, it is well known that the great mystic Durvasa Muni offended the magnanimous King Ambarish and was harassed by the avowed protector of Vaishnavas, Sudarshan Chakra. Even the Supreme Lord could not pardon his offenses. Durvasa Muni had to return to the Vaishnav he offended, and only after surrendering at King Ambarish's feet were his offenses excused. An offender may chant and perform acts of devotion, but they are merely play acting. In 1,000,000 lifetimes, they will not bear the fruit of devotion. What is the use of such bhajan and sadhan if the only medium through whom Krishna's mercy descends is denigrated? It is impossible to receive the Supreme Lord's grace if the blessings of the Guru and the Vaishnavas are ignored. The Supreme Lord is Bhakta Vatsal, or the guardian of devotees. He does not pay the slightest heed to the offenders. Deprived of the Lord's grace, they become subjected to the demoniac and atheistic mentalities which gradually degrade their nature, and they become a burden to the world. During a discussion between Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Rai, Mahaprabhu inquired, "Of all that is good and beneficial to the jiva, what brings him the optimum benefit?" Ramananda Rai replied, "For the jiva, there is no greater benefit than Krishna Bhakta Sangha, our association with Krishna's pure devotees." Mahaprabhu also instructed everyone through Sanatana Gosvāmī. A person born outside of India is not unfit for devotion to Krishna, nor is one considered fit for devotion simply because he is born in a family of Brahmins. Anyone who takes to devotional service is exalted, whereas a sworn non-devotee is always condemned. Therefore, in devotional service to the Lord, there is no consideration of family status. Krishna is always extremely kind to the meek and humble, whereas the aristocrats and learned scholars are too proud of their material qualifications. Among the various acts of devotion, ninefold bhakti, navavidha, is the best as it bestows ecstatic love for Krishna. Of those 9 limbs of bhakti, chanting the Lord's holy name is foremost. If one chants without committing the 10 offenses, he obtains the treasure of love of God. Chaitanya Charitamrita Antyalila. By birth, Brahmins possess sole rights to perform sacrifices, penance, and austerities. But they also seek elevation to the heavenly planets, which are undesirable to the devotee of Krishna. Among the general population, the Brahmins, however, are still considered to be the elite, and so it behooves us to remember the Vedic dictum, Bhakta Matrasya Adhikarita. Not only human beings, but every living entity has a God-given right to engage in bhakti. Therefore, a Vaishnav devotee, even if born in the West, is accepted as the best of Brahmins in a spiritual society. However, if one is a Brahmin by birth and is a non-devotee, then he is considered very degraded. Oh, what's this verse? We learned this verse also. Can't remember it though. If a meat eater becomes a devotee of the Supreme Lord Hari, he is far superior to a Brahmin. But if a Brahmin has no devotion, he is worse than a meat eater. I learned some kind of verse like that. I don't know if that's that one particularly. The most effective religious practice in the present age of Kali Yuga is the Sankirtan Yajna, or singing of the holy name of Krishna under the guidance of pure devotees. Anyone who is initiated into this process of Nam Yajna is elevated among humankind. The Srimad Bhagavatam, the fully ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge, concludes that only one possessed of superior intellect can grasp that Sankirtan Yajna is the sole means in Kali Yuga to worship the Supreme Lord. Instruction on the process of Sankirtan Yajna and Navavidha Bhakti abound in Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna Varnam Tisha Krishnam Sangopangastra Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Prayar Yajanti Hi Sumedasaha. Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.32. In the age of Kali, the most intelligent persons worship Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and sing the holy name of Krishna. Although Mahaprabhu's complexion is not blackish, like Krishna's, he is nonetheless Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. Real intelligence means to worship Krishna exclusively. Below are 3 shlokas which clearly emphasize the efficacy of Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam, our hearing, chanting, and remembrance. Tasmadikena manasa bhagavan sattvatam pati shrotavya kirtitavyascha dheya pujascha nityada. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.14. Being completely focused, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship Bhagavan Shri Krishna, who is the guardian of his devotees. Tasmat sarvatmana rajan hari sarvatra sarvada shrotavya kirtitavyascha smartavyo bhagavan vrinam. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.2.36. It is essential that every human being hear about, glorify, and remember Krishna always and everywhere. Tasmad bharata sarvatma bhagavan ishvaro hari shrotavya kirtitavyascha smartavyascha bhayam. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.1.5. One who wants to be free from this miserable existence must hear about, glorify, and remember Krishna, who is the Supersoul, the Supreme Controller, and our Savior from all miseries. The next shloka establishes that Nam Sankirtan is the best means for success, whether one be a karmi, jnani, or yogi. Etan nirvidyamananam ichatam akuto bhayam yoginam nripanirnitam harer namanukirtanam. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.1.11. Whether you are full of desire or completely free from desire, the only way to end all doubt and fear is to take shelter of the holy name of Krishna under the guidance of a pure devotee. Śrīla Jiva Gosvāmī has profusely glorified the process of Nam Kirtan in describing the Supreme Lord's name, qualities, beauty, and pastimes. In his Bhakti Sandarbha, he explains that the highest principle is for one to be completely and irresistibly devoted to Krishna. This alone will completely satisfy the soul, Atma Suprasiddhati. He quotes from the Bhagavatam regarding Nam Sankirtan as the prime occupation of the jiva. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Mahāraja Yamaraj declares that the 12 Mahājans, the supreme authorities on religion, are unanimous in agreement that devotion to Krishna is the highest religion and that it begins with chanting the holy name of Krishna. Etavan evalokesmin pungsam dharma parasmrita bhakti yogo bhagavati tannama grahanadivi. Srimad Bhagavatam 6.3.22. The ultimate purpose of existence is to love God, Krishna. The path of devotion begins with chanting his holy name. According to one's individual proclivity, one is categorized as a karma yogi, jnana yogi, or bhakti yogi. But without bhakti, no one can attain the supreme destination. Thus, the other yoga systems are dependent on bhakti, while bhakti is dependent on none. It is also stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Nasadayati mam yogo na sankyam dharma uddhava, na svadhyayastapastyago, yata bhaktir mamorjita. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:14-20. Mystic yoga, philosophy, religion, humanitarianism, none of these can satisfy me, but I am a slave to devotion. I'm not sure about, I remember before when it said, I'm a slave to devotion, it didn't say that in the Bengali. I don't think Krishna saying he's a slave is really proper. Anyhow, whatever. I'm conquered by devotion or something. I don't know. Anyhow. Bhakti, service saturated with love, is most adored by the Lord. He says, the fortunate yogi is one whose heart naturally flows towards me and who is united with me in love. Knowledge and renunciation are insufficient means for achieving spiritual perfection. Whatever you can obtain in this world by work, austerity, education, renunciation, mystic yoga, altruism, religion, or any other apparently auspicious path is easily attained by my devotee. He can have whatever he wants, life in the heavenly planets, Brahman realization, even admittance into Vaikuntha. But since my devotees love me dearly, they even refuse to accept my offer of liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:20, 31-35. Why is Krishna Prem the utmost necessity and the prime human goal? Even the sharpest of pundits, after extensive study of Vedanta, cannot perceive this truth. Thus, Krishnadas Kaviraj Gosvāmī has written, according to our karma, we are wandering in the world aimlessly. Only the most fortunate souls find a real guru by the mercy of Krishna. And by the mercy of the Guru, the seed of devotion is carefully planted in our hearts. We learned this verse in our group. Then, like a vigilant gardener, the devotee cares for it, watering it with Krishna's name and acts of devotion. Anyways, this translation also isn't. I know in the original Bengali book, he just gives the Bengali verses. You know, whenever there's Chaitanya Charitamrita verses, he doesn't. Śrīla Bhakti Purī Gosvāmī doesn't give a translation, and it's not just watering with Krishna's name and acts of devotion. It's Shravana Kirtana Jale. What is it? Shravana Kirtana Jale Koroe Sechan. Yeah. Sorry. As the Bhakti Lata Bij, the seed of devotion, grows, it gradually becomes a creeper that penetrates the covering of this material universe, Brahmanda Bedijai, extending into the spiritual world. It grows beyond the Brahma Jyoti and enters the Paravyoma, or spiritual domain. Finally, it reaches the highest spiritual realm of Goloka Vrindavan, and entwines itself around Krishna's lotus feet, which fulfill all desires. There it bears the fruit of prem, love of God. Even though the gardener lives within the world, he continues to nourish the creeper with Krishna Nam and service. However, if by chance the devotee commits Vaiṣṇava Aparādha, it is like letting a mad elephant loose in his garden of devotion. This offense will uproot his bhakti creeper and destroy it. Therefore, the gardener must build a protective fence around this creeper of devotion and avoid committing Vaiṣṇava Aparādha. The other threat is weeds choking the creeper. The desires for sense pleasure, liberation, and numerous other mundane desires are weeds. Duplicity, violence in the form of meat eating, and the desire for fame and fortune are all weeds that will choke the creeper. And no, violence isn't just the form of meat eating. Violence means many other things. It doesn't say that in the verse, meat eating. Although that is a form of himsa, but also himsa is when we turn somebody away from bhakti. You know, like when I'm encouraging somebody to listen to the music that I like to listen to, like mundane music, that can be considered himsa. anyhow, the weeds thrive when they sap the energy spent in nurturing. Okay, so that was the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita verses. These weeds thrive when they sap the energy spent in nurturing the Bhakti Lata. Therefore, the observant and introspective devotee cuts them down and protects the creeper's growth until it reaches Vrindavan. There the creeper bears the fruits of prema, and the devotee reaches... Oh, this is also Chaitanya Charitamrita. They just didn't put a double quotation mark here. Therefore, the observant and introspective devotee cuts them down and protects the creeper's growth until it reaches Vrindavan. Oh, wow, thank you. There the creepers bear the fruits of prema, and the devotee reaches the lotus feet of Krishna, which are like a kalpa vriksha, desire-fulfilling tree. He becomes totally absorbed in tasting the fruit of prema and in serving Krishna's lotus feet. This fruit is the supreme perfection of human aspiration, which makes all other goals appear tiny and insignificant. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 19, 151 to 164. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu revealed the esoteric principles of bhakti to Rupa Gosvāmī, and those who have realized this are indeed rare and fortunate. What could be more unfair than to persecute such a person on the basis of race, color, or social status? Everyone interested in spiritual progress must avoid Vaiṣṇava Aparādha. Worshipping the holy name, Nam Bhajan, is certainly the highest form of devotion. One's level of Vaishnavism is ascertained by the depth of his absorption in Nam Bhajan. Whether one is a neophyte, intermediate, or advanced devotee, the fact that he has committed himself to Krishna Nam puts him in a position worthy of appreciation and respect. Wait, what? Sorry. How did it end? What the... I just got lost. Oh my God, what happened? Oh God, sorry about this, guys. Okay. Oh my God, what happened? Oh, okay, sorry. The next shloka explains that Nam Sankirtan is the best means of success, whether one be a karmic. No, we already read this. Totally got lost. Okay. Okay, here it is. Sorry, that was so bizarre. Okay, so the fact that he's committed himself to Krishna Nam puts him in a position worthy of appreciation and respect. He may come from a bad background. Sorry, I got lost because of this. He may come from a bad background, but to judge him on the basis of any material factors is Vaiṣṇava Aparādha. Tunarapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnana amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Shri Shikshastra, verse 3. One who is humbler than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, and ready to offer all respects to others without expecting any in return, can be constantly absorbed in Krishna Kirtan. Failure to understand this instruction increases one's arrogance, and his devotional discipline suffers. Service and the association of higher Vaishnavas should not create pride in an individual, nor cause him to consider himself a Vaishnava. This type of pride leads to Vaiṣṇava Aparādha. The brilliant example of Namacharya Haridas Thakur is worthy of emulation. Qualifying as a Vaishnava does not depend on individual strength, wealth, or knowledge. Everyone must keep in mind that Krishna is generous with his mercy to the meek and humble. If a person witnesses an offense to a pure Vaishnava, he must vehemently protest. If he is unable to do so, with deep regret, he must leave the place at once and cut off all connection with the offender. We must never minimize the seriousness of Vaiṣṇava Aparādha. Should we attempt to defend the offender on the basis of mundane considerations, as this will become an act of complicity which will destroy our spiritual progress and even our material well-being. Therefore, devotees must always be extremely careful not to become an accomplice to Vaiṣṇava Aparādha. We must always remember how Lord Shiva's wife Sati went so far as to relinquish her body upon hearing offensive words about her Vaishnava husband. A person is recognized as a Vaishnava only when he established himself in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. He must live by the following verse. Which is found in the Padyavali of Rupa Gosvāmī. It is so important that it also appears in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is the verse, Naham Vipra Namcha Narapatir Napi Vaishyana Sudra Naham, that verse. I am not a Brahmin or a king. I am not a businessman or a member of the working class. In fact, I don't identify with any class. I'm not a monk, I'm not married, I'm not retired. All I am is an insignificant servant of the servants of Krishna, who are resplendent with the highest pleasure. Sorry. All I am is an insignificant servant of the servants of Krishna, who, resplendent with highest pleasure, is an endless reservoir of nectar, who takes care of his gopis. Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 1380. Gopi Bhartu Parakamalayur Das Anudasa. When Vaishnavas born to higher class families look down upon the Vaishnavas born to lower class families, then they do not even understand common courtesy, what to speak of proper Vaishnava etiquette. On the other hand, embracing Vaishnavism in order to pass judgment on Brahmins is also forbidden by the scriptures. The verbal attacks of so-called Vaishnavas towards Brahmins and vice versa can only degrade societal values. There is nothing spiritual about such conflicts. They only lead to chaos and disruption. One of the most absurd examples of Aparādha took place in Krishna's Śrīla. Once, a king named Pondraka claimed that he was Vasudeva, that he was Krishna. He sent a messenger to Krishna in Dwarka that he should step down from his position as God, or he would challenge him in battle. Upon hearing such ravings, Krishna laughed and sent a message that if Pondraka did not stop this insanity, he would have to face the consequences. The Lord followed up on his threat, killing both Pondraka and his ally, the king of Kashi. To pretend that one is Krishna is the highest insolence and leads to doom. Similarly, posing as a Vaishnava while being intoxicated with pride is disastrous. The final decree of Mahaprabhu is not just the renunciation of bad association. He says that the renunciate and the surrendered soul have similar characteristics, but the devotee not only gives up the world, but offers himself to the Lord. A devotee takes complete shelter in Krishna with full dedication. This is the culmination of surrender, Atma Nivedanam. If one's renunciation lacks soul surrender, then gradually it becomes superficial and false. False renunciation, Falgu Vairagya, invites the ghosts of impersonalism to attack the intellect. The Bhagavad Gita states, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam rasopyasya parang drishtva nivartate. Bhagavad Gita 2:59. We may refrain from sense enjoyment, but the taste for it remains. Only by experiencing the higher taste of Bhakti Ras do we become fixed in higher consciousness. This means that as one increases his committing, Let me reread that. This means that if one increases his commitment to Krishna consciousness, automatically his attachment to mundane concepts and identities diminish. At the same time, Vaishnava qualities in a commensurate degree blossom in his character. Such a fortunate soul is embellished with all good qualities. The Chaitanya Charitamrita says that a devotee of Krishna is decorated with Krishna's qualities. When a devotee develops love for Krishna, he loves everything connected to Krishna, Krishna, and surrender to Krishna's lotus feet becomes his only interest. As the devotee begins to identify himself as the servant of the servants of Krishna, bad association begins to disappear. Pure attraction for Krishna and Krishna awakens. Lots of times, like Vaishnavas, the devotees of Krishna are called Krishnas, and the devotees of Vishnu are called Vaishnavas. So, Krishna means devotees of Krishna. So pure attraction for Krishna and Krishna awakens Krishna's devotees. Envy and pride do not exist in this state of consciousness. The heart's yearning to seek Krishna intensifies to the degree that the devotee sincerely cries out Krishna's name day and night. Everything else fades into oblivion. Therefore, pure Vaishnava theology has nothing to do with social position. Mahaprabhu's teachings formulates the pure Vaishnava religion. At its very root is service to Krishna and Krishna through the process of complete surrender, and therein lies the true satisfaction of the senses. If a person from the lower rungs of society desires the respect of a Brahmin and outwardly accepts Vaishnavism as his religion, then his spiritual pursuit is materially motivated. Materialistic motivation does not equate with pure Vaishnavism. It is a grave offense to treat a Vaishnava as a non-Vaishnava, or to judge him by mundane standards. Equally offensive is to praise a non-Vaishnava and worship him as a Vaishnava, or to glorify a neophyte devotee as an advanced devotee. See, this is really important. Equally offensive is to praise a non-Vaishnava and worship him as a Vaishnava, or to glorify a neophyte devotee as an advanced devotee. Only when one is fixed in the Krishna conception and his inherent spiritual identity, and is devoted to Krishna and Krishna under the direction of Sri Guru, can we find relief from the clutches of Vaishnava Aparādha. Our predecessor acharyas have warned us that our chanting will never become pure if we keep bad association. At best, such chanting is only mere shadow of the holy name, or namabhas, and namaparad is always lurking. Bad association is always a detriment to the path of Krishna Bhakti. So if one desires to chant Krishna's name purely, he must associate with Vaishnavas. Simultaneously, he must stop craving carnal pleasure, liberation, mystic power, and other material things. Bhukti mukti sprihayavat pishachi hridi vartate tavar bhakti sukhasyatra katam abhyuktayo bhavet. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-2-22. There is no question of experiencing the pleasure of devotion as long as twin ghosts, sense pleasure and liberation, haunt us. According to spiritual authorities, a satsanga is comprised of non-Vaishnavas. They are karmis, sensualists, jnanis, empiricists, and mystics whose real desire is to achieve power. Advancement in bhakti is directly connected to avoiding bad association and seeking and keeping good. Advancement in bhakti is directly connected to avoiding bad association and seeking and keeping good association. The predominant quality of a Brahman is sattva gun, the mode of goodness. The Kshatriyas are under the influence of a strong rajagun, passion, mixed with a weak sattva gun. The Vaishyas, the businessmen, are controlled by a mixture of raja and tama, passion and ignorance, while the Sudras, the working class, are predominantly in the clutches of tamagun, ignorance. So the Brahmins are considered to be the highest class in human society because they're endowed with the noble qualities like sense control, truthfulness, and the ability to discriminate between matter and spirit. They are the gurus, or spiritual guides in the Varnashram system, the social order. Varnashram system of social order. In the ancient Vedic social stratification, there are 4 spiritual orders of life, or ashrams: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Celibate student life, householder, the retired, and the renunciates. Of these, sannyas, renunciation, is preeminent because it facilitates freedom from material entanglement, thereby making it easier to elevate oneself to the transcendental plane. However, Kaviraj Gosvāmī is quick to warn that those who think that the sannyas order gives a person special status. He warns of those people who think that. If the followers of the Varnashram system simply observe the regulations and responsibilities of their social and religious orders, but neglect to worship Krishna, they fall into degraded conditions. The Srimad Bhagavatam states that the followers of the Varnashram system who neglect the worship of Lord Vishnu become arrogant and obsessed with their social positions and fall down. The most important quality of a devotee is that he serves Krishna, indifferent to what or whom is superior in this material world. The scriptures state that devotees of Krishna are the most elevated members of society, whereas non-devotees are degraded regardless of their social position. In order to worship and serve Krishna, material qualifications are not necessary. Everyone is eligible. The Srimad Bhagavatam makes constant reference to the fact that work without devotion is useless. The same principle applies to education, philosophy, yoga, or anything else. Pure devotion is above and beyond devotion mixed with karma, jnana, or yoga. Those who understand the true meaning of these statements in the scriptures are beyond any social restriction. However, this cannot be used as an excuse to not follow the rules and regulations of devotion. As long as one has not awakened a taste for devotion, one is obliged to adhere to the regulative principles of the Vedic injunctions. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:29. How does that verse go? It's really annoying how they don't put the Sanskrit. Anyhow, it's an important verse. How does it go? Anyhow, I'll look after. A faithful devotee is not inspired by any activity other than devotion, because his faith has been aroused by hearing Krishna's wonderful pastimes. According to the degree of his surrender, he will ignore social order, varnashram. At the same time, he realizes the need for establishing a structure to keep society from falling into a state of anarchy and chaos. Oh God, this is killing me. Srimad Bhagavatam 11:29. Sorry guys, I really where was I? A faithful devotee is not inspired by any activity other than devotion because of his faith being aroused. According to the degree of his surrender, he will ignore social order, varnashram. At the same time, he realizes the need for establishing a structure to keep society from falling into a state of anarchy and chaos. Sorry, guys. Deviations from the Vedic injunctions are the bane of modern society. Plagued by uncontrolled and irresponsible habits and diet and sex, the ideals and benefits of the Varnashram system have been, for the most part, lost, even within India. The erosion of moral standards, which reflect all human interaction, should alarm anyone who is concerned with the ultimate good of human society. Vaishnavas cooperate with persons who are like-minded and have similar habits, but they cannot support the present-day society's capriciousness, and more importantly, apathy to God consciousness. The pursuit of devotion, even one's eating habits, are important. It has been said, "You are what you eat." The Yoga Shastra of Patanjali Rishi prohibits the yogi from accepting food cooked by persons with mentalities contrary to their own. Such food causes wavering of resolve in those who desire to elevate themselves in yoga, and may yield a disastrous result. Regulations in every aspect of preparing and taking food directly affects the levels of purity in one's consciousness. The Vedas say, Ahara Shuddho Sata Shuddhi Sattva Shuddho Dhruva Smriti. A pure diet purifies the consciousness and focuses the mind in constant remembrance of the ultimate goal of life. For this reason, strict devotees won't even accept food cooked by Brahmins if they are non-devotees. In the Itihas Samuchai, the Lord says, "A person who has no devotion is not dear to me, even if he is learned in all the Vedas. But if a reformed meat-eater performs devotional service, then he is dear to me. Therefore, one should give charity to such a person and receive gifts from him, for he is as worshipable as I am." Hari Bhakti Vilas 10.1.27. Devotees relish prasadam, our food offered to the Supreme Lord, with love and devotion, and never refuse prasadam from any Vaiṣṇava, regardless of his family background. Such refusal is another form of Vaiṣṇava Aparādha. Śrīla Raghunath Das Gosvāmī has shown that Krishna consciousness is not limited to Krishna, but includes where he lives, his family, and friends, his devotees, the Brahmins, his name, our Guru, and his better half, Srimati Radharani herself. My dear mind, I humbly bow before you. I beg you to please give up all pride and fully surrender to Sri Gurudev, the spiritual abode of Raj Dham, to the residents of Raj, to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, to the Sattvika Brahmins, to the holy name of the Supreme Lord, and to the ever-youthful divine couple of blossoming beauty, Shri Gandharvika Giridhari, and in this way quickly develop sublime attachment to them. First verse of Manashiksha. Śrīla Raghunath Das Gosvāmī addresses his own mind in order to speak to us, and his teachings are indispensable to our spiritual progress. A Vaishnava must remain prideless like Raghunath Das, even though he was fully conversant. The way they lay out this book is really complicated. Even though he is fully conversant with the esoteric conclusions of pure devotion, he exemplified proper Vaishnava conduct. Even if a Vaishnava is very elevated, he always thinks of himself as lowly and meek. We must constantly remember Mahaprabhu's instruction of Chanadapi Sunichena, that we should feel humbler than a blade of grass. If one thinks of himself as an elevated Vaishnava, then he cannot remain prideless. The desire for fame and adoration, pratishtha, will contaminate his consciousness. If he purposely leaves his food remnants for others, his consciousness will become weighed down by arrogance. This is from a song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. No. আমি আজকে পাবো না, আমার খিদে লাগছে না। কি? আরে কিছু সময় লাগবে, হ্যাঁ। এখন খিদে লাগছে না। No. If he purposely leaves his food remnants for others, okay, so this song is, how does it go? Anyways, in order to avoid these pitfalls, the Vaishnava must uchishtadidane have abhimana bhar. In order to avoid these pitfalls, the Vaishnava must always think of himself as the humble Tai Shishatava Takiya Sarvada Naloivo Pujakar. In order to avoid these pitfalls, the Vaishnava must always think of himself as the humble disciple of his spiritual master, who is simply accepting worship on his Guru's behalf. It's from the song Kripa Koro Vaishnava Thakur. This is a translation of that. We're almost at the end. This is a long chapter, my God. Okay. Once the devotee is able to feel himself to be an insignificant servant, then nothing will divert him from the path of Shuddha Bhakti. His heart will always shine with humility, and there will be no room for the darkness of deceit. To feel pride internally while making a show of humility is dishonest and absolutely foreign to a pure devotee. One who has developed pure love for the Supreme Lord, who is immersed in meditation on the holy name, whose heart is constantly searching for Krishna while sincerely crying out to him, such a person is undoubtedly a Vaishnava who can purify the entire world. Under no condition does pride, honor, or even worship affect him. He is always ready to offer obeisances to everyone because he sees all living beings as part of Krishna. Such an exalted person would never insult even an ordinary jiva, what to speak of a Vaishnava. He is the embodiment and protector of Mahaprabhu's teachings. Jive saman dive jani Krishna adishtan. Offer respect to all living beings, knowing that Krishna resides in their hearts. If we can emulate such an elevated mood, then by the Vaishnava's mercy, we can acquire the great fortune of relishing the nectarian ocean of pure devotion. Haribol! That was a really long chapter, but very beautiful also. So there's only this chapter left, and this one is a short chapter. Guru Aparādha, spiritual suicide. Guru Aparādha. That's what we'll read tomorrow. Alright, I'm just going to do a quick Mahamantra to end this, since it's kind of late. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Oh, and sorry, while I'm reading, I keep on... See, what I do in my GVP Seva, like my service in the publications, it's a service I prefer doing translation stuff, but what I always end up having to do is doing fidelity checking. So I'm constantly having to check against the original source, the source text, to see if there's any, like if the translation is accurate, or if there's anything different in the Bengali and in the English, or in the Hindi and the English. And so that's why when I read, I often fall into my my fidelity checking mode, but I should just keep my mouth shut and not say actually throughout all the time, it's always coming to my head, like, does it really say that in the Bengali, or does it? And it's probably really messing up the flow, though, of the reading, so I gotta stop doing that. It's just my habit. Anyhow. No, Manjari's saying it's a very important service. I know, but I know that when I'm reading, it's disturbing the flow also. You know, like we're reading a beautiful thing, and then I'm like, does it really say that? So I know it's an important service, but I also need to be sensitive to that. Okay, please don't stop. All right. Rukmini is saying, yes, fidelity checking is important. Sarva Bhavana Prabhu actually said that in editing, they had changed the meaning of the translation. Yeah, that happens a lot. It's a really... That's why I always like to go to the source whenever I read anything. Whenever I read anything, I'm always reading it I always feel very suspicious. I don't have very much trust in translations. Anyhow. Okay. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari Shri Radha Vinod Vihari Ju ki Jai Shri Govinda Gopinath Madan Mohan Ju ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmad Shri Bhaktivedanta Narayan Gosvāmī Mahārāja Shri Gurudev ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmad Shri Bhaktivedanta Vaman Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmad Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Mahārāja Shri Prabhupada ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmad Śrīla Bhakti Pramoda Purī Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmad Śrīla Bhakti Vigyan Keshav Gosvāmī Mahārāja ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnupad Ashtara Shatashmad Śrīla Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Gosvāmī Prabhupada ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Mahabhagavat Śrīla Gorkshadas Babaji Maharaj ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Śrīla Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki Jai Nitya Vishnu Vaiṣṇava Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki Jai Shri Rupanu Gauriya Guru Varga ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Sharda Goswami Prabhu ki Jai Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai Shri Kshetra Mandal Gaura Mandal Vraja Mandal Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki Jai Sarva Abhishta Bharata Giriraj Maharaj ki Jai Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki Jai Shri Mona Devi Ganga Devi ki Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai Shri Bhakti Devi ki Jai Shri Purnamasi Yogamaya ki Jai Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki Jai Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashaja Krishna Bhakti Pradadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyashta Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Dandavat Pranams. This is the original book, Vaiṣṇava Aparādha by Śrīla Bhakti Pramoda Purī Gosvāmī Mahārāja. And all throughout it, I write, like all the words that I don't know, I underline them and then I look them up in the dictionary. And then all throughout this book, there's, as I mentioned before, there's no chapters. It's all just one continuous long thing. And also the order of everything is completely different in this book. Like in this original book, there's it starts off with, I read this last year, so I don't remember. I think it started off with the story of Advaita Acharya and Sachimata. And anyhow, yeah, it does. Starts off with Sachimata, then afterwards I think it's Shiva. And anyways, all right, I'm gonna go now. Thanks for reading with me. This is an extra long reading today. Wow. Sometimes the chapters were only 2 pages, and this one was like, I don't know how many pages. I think it was like 7 or 8 big pages. I don't know. All right, thank you. Jai Shri Radhe. See you tomorrow.